Hey, welcome to Real Retail TV. This week's episode is going to be a clip from the 2023 Retail Success Summit. And I'd also love to invite you to join us on Friday, July the 7th. We're going to be hosting a watch party, and we're going to release Bob's keynote from the summit called Mighty on Main Street. We're going to be watching it together and live chatting. We're going to be able to talk to Bob before and after the keynote, and I think you're going to absolutely love what he has to say about how you can become mighty on Main Street.
You have to be willing and able to do the things that the big brands can't or won't do. Two things: be fundamentally strong and do the things that the big brands can't or won't do. You know, they asked Steve Martin, the famous comedian, how did you become so successful? Everybody kept asking him this. I listened to an interview that Steve Martin had with Charlie Rose, and what he said was, everybody wants me to tell them I should get an agent. I should do this kind of venue. I should do this, I should do that. But my answer was always the same. And the answer is always be so good they can't ignore you. And that's the answer here. The answer is to be so good they can't ignore you. To be the kind of merchant that when somebody comes into your store, they go, wow, this place is different. This place has a feeling of competence. And also to do the things that the big brands can't or won't do. So let me tell you a couple stories about can't and won't and being good. And the first story comes from me. And as some of you know, we sold a lot of yo-yos when I was at the Mackinac Kite Company. I mean, a lot of yo-yos. Several $1 million worth of yo-yos when we did our yo-yo booms. But now, we didn't sell yo-yos. We didn't just have yo-yos up on a peg. We sold yo-yos. We created yo-yo players. We would go into a town, and we had a full-time team of yo-yo professionals. These kids took a year off of college, and they were hot yo-yo players. And we would go into schools, and we would give a free assembly. And this assembly had a motivational message that my father, the preacher, created. It was called Dream, Dare, Do. And so this was it was totally free to the schools. And these kids would come in, and on the way into the assembly, they would get a $1 gift certificate to be used on a purchase of a yo-yo. Actually, it could be used on anything. But so what would happen? So our yo-yo pros, they had a big sound system, and they were doing all the tricks, and they were doing the message. And at some moment during that presentation, for a certain percentage of those kids, that gift certificate turned into a yo-yo. They'd go home, they'd tell their parents, Mom, Dad, I need a yo-yo. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I need a yo-yo, I need a yo-yo. They'd pester their parents till their parents came in. But then when they came in, we didn't just sell them a yo-yo. That's what Toys R Us would do. That's what a supermarket would do if they sold yo-yos. That's what Myers or Kmart's. No. You see, because we were creating success, because we were creating yo-yo players, whenever any kid would buy a yo-yo from us, their first yo-yo was always a brain yo-yo. The brain yo-yo was the easiest yo-yo to learn on. So we sold them something that would set them up for success, but we sold it in a bundle. And in that bundle also came 5 replacement strings. Why 5 replacement strings? Because the minute a string broke, the yo-yo went into the drawer. And when the yo-yo went into the drawer, the kid wasn't playing anymore. And if the kid wasn't playing anymore, they didn't have any success. And they weren't on their road to becoming a yo-yo player. They weren't on the road to being part of our yo-yo community. They weren't on the road to being a collector. So we always sold them extra strings as part of our bundle. But not only did we sell them extra strings, we cut the string to size. Because if the kid was short, if the kid was young, and he threw the yo-yo down and it hit the ground and broke, what happened? It went in the drawer. End of story. So we always cut it to size. And not only did we cut it to size, but we taught them how to throw their first sleeper. No kid ever left the store without having learned one basic trick. Now, the third part of the bundle was a trick book, because if the kid went home and just threw a sleeper, boring. So we wanted them to learn more tricks. So do you see what we're doing? Do you see what we did that nobody else would do? An online brand, well, there weren't any online brands at that time, wouldn't have been able to do that. A big brand, Toys R Us, wouldn't have done that. But we were doing something the big brands wouldn't or couldn't do. But now we took it a step farther. When they were checking out, we invited them to join our Pro Spinners Club. And our Pro Spinners Club rewarded kids for learning tricks. So they would come in on Tuesdays and Thursday nights for Pro Spinner Club meetings, and they would show that they learned the tricks, and then they would, move up in status. They would win prizes, including a super cool limited edition Fireball yo-yo. I mean, this is big stuff. This is big stuff to those kids. But you see what we did? And so these kids all of a sudden became players. These kids became collectors. Kids who were not popular. Kids who were not good athletes, weren't on the sports teams, all of a sudden had status. They were yo-yo players. Some of those kids went on to become our yo-yo pros. But we did the things that nobody else was willing to do. This is Mighty on Main Street. This is how you become the store of choice in a world of infinite possibilities, right? Doing what they can't and won't do. Let me tell you another story. So Maureen Doran joined the Platinum Mastermind group around 10 years ago. And she was an already very successful merchant, but her growth had kind of stagnated. She likes ideas. She wanted something more. And she had an idea. She had an idea for a subscription box. And this is before subscription boxes were a big thing. And so she wanted some help with this subscription box idea. So at her first meeting, she had a hot seat. That's one of the things that we do. And she talked about her subscription box idea. And everybody got excited about her subscription box idea because it was a good idea. But then later on that night, as she tells the story, Russ Herman, who you'll hear more about later, said to her, Maureen, you can do this subscription box. Something good will happen from this subscription box. It's a great idea. But if you just do the things that the people in this room tell you to do, if you start to think like us, you will grow faster, you will grow easier, it will be better. So she went back to her store, and there were two things that when she tells the story after the fact, two things were happening. She was doing business the exact same way that all of the independent retail women clothing stores in her community were doing business. They were closed on Sunday, and their return policy was something like, you have 7 days, you better have a receipt, it better be new, the receipts better be on it, and if you do want to exchange it, it's for an in-store credit only. So, this very, very customer whiz-bangy return policy. You all know what I'm talking about, right? So Maureen got back, and so the first thing she did was said, okay, I'm going to open on Sundays. She opened on Sundays. Lo and behold, her business started to grow. Guess why? If you open on Sundays, you're going to get an extra 52 days worth of sales every single year. So this is working. And then she said something that was really interesting and I found very fun. She said, you know, my return policy always bothered me, but I did it because everybody else was doing it. I was doing it because the department stores were doing it. I was doing it because Neiman was doing it and Bloomingdale's was doing it. So I decided to change my return policy. I decided to make it like everybody else in the Platinum Mastermind group. Basically, if you're not happy with it, I'm not happy with it. If you're not happy with it, it's not a perfect purchase. If you're not happy with it, this isn't good for either of us because you're not going to come back. And I want your lifetime value. I want that relationship. So she changed her return policy. And then she sat on it and she sat on it. Her team started to have more confidence on the floor. Her team was able to look her customers in the face and say, oh, you don't like it? That's okay. That's all right. You can bring it back. We stand behind everything we sell. How many of you have return policies that are incredibly generous? Way more generous than there you go. Yeah, I love it. Thank you very much. But now here's where Maureen became Mighty on Main Street. Here's the Mighty on Main Street mentality. She went all in and she created the wardrobe rewind. And she made a video on social media and she did whoa, I better watch it. I'm going to step on my shoelace and fall over the front of the stage. She said she created the wardrobe rewind. In the very first video she did from inside her closet. And she said, you know, we have the world's most generous return policy here at Skirt, and I want to tell you about it. If you have anything that you have ever bought from Skirt, if you bought it last year, if you bought it 5 years ago, if you bought it 15 years ago, bring it in. We'll buy it back from you. And I'm not going to get into all the details of the promotion, but she bought back all of these clothes and she donated it to a nonprofit in the Philadelphia area called Our Closet. And what she said was people were stopping her in the grocery store saying, wow, that's absolutely amazing. Bloomingdale's won't do that. Neiman Marcus, who is famous for their return policy, wouldn't do that. But she did that. Now you think about this for a moment. With our yo-yo promotions, we were going into schools. We were giving them something of value. We were getting new customers. We were doing good things in our community. We were doing things the big brands couldn't or wouldn't do. We were becoming the store of choice. Maureen was doing things the big brands couldn't or wouldn't do. She was becoming the store of choice. She was doing things differently.
Oh, that was fantastic. Absolutely wonderful. And I do want you to know that if you enjoyed that keynote, that there are 13 more amazing presentations just like that available. We have all the replays of every presentation at the Retail Success Summit available, and we'd love for you to check them out. It's just like being there live. We've even included all of the breakout sessions this year for the very first time. So please check it out. All the replays are available from the entire Retail Success Summit.